All right, welcome in. It's Wednesday. It's time for Full Court Press. Rob Bino, I decided to troll myself on the show today. I got to know better than to go against New Mexico at the pit. Ruined our parlay with that one. It was a game. Admittedly, I was occupied with a very good game in Newark last night that I was at, so I didn't watch much of the Grand Canyon, New Mexico game. But it looked like a game until it wasn't. I think I looked down at my phone. It's tied in the second half. I look down at my phone again. They're down by 30. So I don't know what happened in the pit, but it looked like New Mexico just did, I guess, what they do at home when they, sort of ride the wave of that crowd and blow a game open. Unfortunately, it cost us our parlay. But my only play for clients yesterday was Baylor. Nice, easy winner. Never even a sweat. I was at the UConn Seton Hall game. I was like, all right, well, I'll watch on my phone if I have to. Rob, that was a check the score twice throughout the game. I was never worried about Baylor. They crush Oklahoma State. You had a great call on Nova. Sorry I ruined it for you. But how'd your night go other than that?
The college hoop was good. It was almost 5-0. Belmont team total fell just a shade short in that 78-74 win over Valpo, who seems to give them trouble each and every year in the home gym. But other than that, had the Florida-Oklahoma game over the total. Pretty easy. Florida looked great offensively. The guards are coming around for that team. They're becoming a complete unit. Had the Virginia team total. Of course, you and I discussed Virginia-Louisville a couple of days ago. Number just seemed too low to me, Adam, 75.5. So clients got a win there. They got another win with the Ohio-Toledo game over. Again, never in doubt. And, of course, the one we released here as part of the parlay, the Nova team total over, which I tell you, they were cruising almost to the point where I thought we'll just chalk this one up until they hit 79, and it wasn't as easy anymore. They stalled there for a minute, but Providence kept the game close enough to where there were going to be free throws at the end. And sure enough, you wind up with I think 88-84 final in that one. So it was good. I mean, you take 4-1 any day of the week. It continues, I think, since December 1st. We're now, and again, at a lesser rate. I haven't really played a lot of a high percentage of bankroll on these plays, just more volume, lesser percentage, up about 26 units. Good for number 2 at WagerTalk since December the 1st. So it's a 6-7 week run here that's been really good.
Yeah, I'm on a nice run myself since January 1st, trying to turn around a bad first couple months. So it's been really good. I've got 5 straight 4% winners, bringing that into today. Already have a 4%er up for today, and you can get all of mine and Rob's plays on the joint package that is going to be a season-long thing. So that's up on both of our pages. And you get 3 days, every pick that we make for the next 3 days. I've already locked in a 4% play for today. And Rob, with this slate, probably going to find something else. There's a lot of games, so we're going to get into it. I think the feature game we decided tonight, especially after Iowa State got just waxed at Allen Fieldhouse last night. Feature game is going to have to be Vandy. They're heading to Austin, Texas. Texas, pretty disappointing season, I would say, until last time out. They get a huge win over Alabama. Rob Bino, can they do it again? Can they end the perfect season for Vandy in Austin tonight?
It's going to be, and I hate to say it's going to be difficult when the preferred team or the better team is the road team, because we saw last night when you go into an opposing venue inside of conference, and it's not like it's anything new. Conference road is always treacherous in these power conferences and even in the mid-major conferences. But, to your point about Kansas earlier, they destroyed Iowa State. Iowa State walked in as about the same, I guess, almost the same size favorite as Vandy is tonight going into Austin, and didn't walk out very successful. A couple of things here. Vanderbilt just does everything so well. If you're Texas, there's really nothing that they do that Vanderbilt isn't better at this point in time. So when you have an underdog like that at home, and if you're a home underdog player, you immediately look towards the point spread. And how much are you going to give me if I'm going to take the lesser team? What am I going to get here? You're going to get about 5.5. We'll see if it's enough. With Vandy, Adam, it's a team that even the other day against LSU, they had a 1 for 15 second half shooting threes and still won the game by 15 points. I mean, to quote Mark Byington here, the head coach, he says, we went through a shooting drought and these kids still figured a way out of it. We were going against a team that really wanted to win, but our guys had a response in different ways. I really hope we keep that the entire year. You walk in with a bullseye on your chest. We've mentioned this about undefeateds the last few days. This is another one that comes in. Texas is going to give them their best shot, and certainly they played well against Alabama in that win the other night. I don't think Alabama's the defensive team that Vandy is. I don't think, Alabama's a great offensive team with pace, as is Vandy, but I think Vandy is the better shooting team, the more efficient team. So Texas has that up against them. And you also have to try and replicate the performance out of Jordan Pope on Saturday night, right? He was absolutely on fire. 6 of 13 from 3, 28 points in the game, carried the team. Is Sean Miller actually, and we've mentioned head coach after head coach this year that's had something derogatory to say about their team. And generally it's defensive effort or energy level. And Miller called the team out before the game and they went out and won that one. He seems to think that it's a bit of a confidence builder. That confidence could come crashing down right away. This total is 165.5. I looked there. Texas actually, Adam, has played quite a few games, 5 that have gone over this number, 2 that have gotten to 164, and 1 that's gotten to 165. So they're no stranger to this point territory. It seems high to me, but when I think about it in terms of final score, 86-81, something like that, that seems really reasonable in a game like this. So for me, if I had to play, I really think I'd be on Vanderbilt still. I will say one last thing. At some point in time, and we're only in mid-January, so maybe it's not now, but the loss of Frankie Collins 5 days ago just put Vandy at a little bit of a depth shyness where rotation is concerned. And I don't know that it's too early in the conference schedule to say that they're going to get fatigued, but I do wonder road trips beginning of February, middle of February, if the gas tank doesn't run a little dry on this Vanderbilt trio that's been so fantastic so far this season. I'll say all 5, the starting quintet, but the 3 in particular, the backcourt has been great for them. So tonight, I think if I had to, I would lean Vandy. No real spot for me on the total. Great game to watch, but difficult game to play. I'll say that.
Yeah, Texas needs a friendly whistle in this game, in my opinion. They will get to the foul line. They get to the foul line a ton. So they could really, in my opinion, benefit from like this being called tight and a lot of fouls being called. But the problem with that, Rob, is if it's being called tight and it's being called tight both ways, Vokatitis would probably get himself into foul trouble. And that's a huge issue for Texas, because if he is not on the floor, that's a problem, in my opinion, for the Longhorns. And then you've got this Vandy team has been so impressive. Even without Collins, their guards are just so good. And I talked about this yesterday, and I feel like it really kind of came to fruition where you're being forced to pay an insane premium for these like home team in the big spot, national TV, like big time home game. And over almost everyone fell flat yesterday, right? Like if you were the out there being, trying to outthink the room, being like Oklahoma at home, they got crushed. Mississippi State crushed. There was a few of them. Actually, the game I was at probably was trending toward being one of those. And then Seton Hall kind of miraculously came back to cover that number. But this one's not as bad as some of the other ones, and even some of the ones on today's card. Like I feel like this number is fair. I kind of make it right in this range, Rob. Texas 5 plus 5.5. I think the number is fair, but I do think Texas needs some things to go their way. Specifically, if they can if they can live at the foul line here, they're getting the friendly whistle, and they're just pretty much allowed to rack up fouls and shoot free throws. I think they can be in this game. If that's not the case, I don't know if they're good enough to hang with Vandy over 40 minutes, especially even without Collins. Tanner and Duke Miles are going to outplay their guards, in my opinion. So it's like Texas needs to live at the free throw line, and they can't have Vokatitis get in foul trouble and not be on the floor. Those are the big things for Texas, because when he's not on the floor, that team is just very different on both ends. And so it's a tough one. I'm not the biggest. I haven't been the biggest fan of this Texas team. So for me, Rob, I don't know if I can come in and then play them after they just beat Alabama. I don't like being reactive like that. So that's the other thing for me. Will be a good one. I think but hey, if you get the tight whistle, maybe the over is in play, because if Texas is allowed to just go and, get points from the foul line, I think Vandy's still going to score here. So maybe the over is in play. I can't. Did you say over? I was like listening to you talk about Vandy. I didn't really hear the total aspect.
Yeah, I wouldn't play under. That's for sure. I mean, like I say, Texas has been in and around this 165.5 number quite a bit this year. 5 times they've gotten over it. A couple times they've gotten to 64. Once they got to 65. So, and especially, Adam, if you have the free throw extension at the end, Vandy's an exceptional free throw shooting team. If they're the one in front, you're probably going to score from the free throw line. They're just so complete. I mean, it's hard to believe that with their lack of a true big, that they can be the shot blocking force that they are, that they can be the defensive rebounding force that they are. They're just better in all aspects. I think at first glance, people would recognize them this season as an offensive team. But it's all the other little stuff that they do so well. And I don't think their depth comes into play here yet. I do think in February, when they're on the road, maybe Frankie Miles, they're talking about possibly NCAA tournament after the meniscus surgery. We'll see. But it's hard to go against Vanderbilt right now, other than 16-0 going on the road and a team lying in wait. But I would take your advice that maybe Texas, that win against Alabama, that could have been a one-off, right? Texas hadn't really shown that all season long. And if that's just a one-game effort, Sean Miller did seem to think that maybe the team has a shot of confidence. We'll find out. Tough game to play. Maybe in-game, but tough game to play from the outset.
Rob, did you know Wawa sells 2 bigger sizes of coffee than this right here?
It's crazy.
Who needs more coffee than that? This is already a lot.
I happen to have 2 Wawas. Because they just built another one. 2 Wawas within 1.5 miles of my home here. So the one that was 1.5 miles away wasn't good enough. They had to put one on the other side of the road that was about 0.8 of a mile closer to me. So yeah, Wawa's a great place for sure.
My sister's got like 5, like within close proximity to her house, but you got to 2 miles in central New York is a lot different than 2 miles in South Jersey, Philadelphia area. So yeah, I actually there was one that was much easier to get to than the other. It's something I guess you learn the hard way down here. 2 miles down here might be, 17 lights.
Right.
You're battling. Yeah. We're going to go out. So this is Garth. First of all, thank you for the donation. And he wants to talk Wyoming, San Diego State. This kind of illustrates my point. I think, with these, the books are really, in my opinion, they're making my life easier, because they're taking so many games just and making it so they're impossible to play with the tax that they're putting on home court suddenly. I think that this will wear off over time. But Rob, I think you get this whole thing where it's the finals week happened, or finals month, and then it's you've got some time off, and then there's no one in the stands because students are on break. Students come back, suddenly you've got a little bit of atmosphere. Now you're in conference play, and it's the big home game spot starts to pop up. The problem with that is you're getting numbers like you're getting in this game. And so Garth says, thoughts on Wyoming, San Diego State. I can't pick a side. He does like Wyoming team total over. Well, Garth, the reason you can't pick a side is because you're probably pretty tuned in. You probably make your own power rankings, and you're wow, this is probably a pretty tough spot for San Diego State to have to go in altitude. And then you look at the number and realize it's 1.5. And you got to say to yourself, how can I possibly justify backing Wyoming and only getting a point or a point and a half when I think anyone that makes like power ratings probably has San Diego State like significantly higher. So Rob, my question to you is like, what are we giving 7 or 8 points here at home for Wyoming? Like that's where I'm having a hard time with trying to bet a side in this game. So maybe you do go the totals route. Can Wyoming score more than 74 points tonight?
Well, it obviously can, Adam, because there's potential for them to get their pace in this game. Unlike a lot of previous editions of San Diego State, they're playing pretty quick for a San Diego State team, right? They're number 2 in tempo in league play. Of course, league play only has a few instances so far. But again, Wyoming's going to go out and try to push tempo. It's basically the way they have to play to win this game. You can't go down and set up against a San Diego State defense. That defense, for what it's worth, has held 3 of their first 4 Mountain West opponents under this total of 74.5. But if San Diego State's willing to go with Wyoming, and San Diego State has some offensive firepower, and as I mentioned, playing at the number 2 pace in the Mountain West, then certainly Wyoming could get over the total here. San Diego State's the better team. Wyoming's off a loss, which actually helps when you have the home team here off of a loss, but it was a high-scoring loss. A lot of times when a team puts up a bunch of points the game before, I don't like to come back with them second time around. However, this number is considerably lower, due in fact to the San Diego State defensive ability. So you get that 74.5 guard at home with Wyoming. I guarantee you probably don't see 74.5 as a team total for Wyoming and Mountain West play the rest of the year. So this is your one shot to get this number. And it's more than doable in this instance. I haven't played it yet. I think in this league, even though Utah State is generally as good, or in the case of this season, maybe even better than San Diego State is the one team that walks into road arenas with the immediate bullseye on their chest. Like they're the team that gets everybody's best shot in that particular league. It's San Diego State. They'll get Wyoming's best shot tonight. So I'll phrase it this way for you, Garth. I wouldn't play Wyoming's team total under in this instance. I think there's too many elements from a fundamental standpoint that this game could get a little bit up and down, and Wyoming could get some open floor and be able to score 75. And it could get, I tell you what, this game could get a little physical where you end up on the foul line. San Diego State's not, not against being very physical with teams. And I think you talked about maybe potential for whistles in the Texas game, Adam. Potential for whistle here would help Wyoming as well to get up and over this number.
I want to clarify something, because like, just because I say that it's crazy that I wouldn't bet the number where it is, does not mean I really like San Diego State. That's what the great thing is about being on our side of the counter, Rob. We don't have to bet every game. We don't have to put a number out for every game. We have a slate like this. We maybe bet 2 or 3 of them. Now, Bayou says Wyoming plus 2.5. Now, that doesn't surprise me at all. Personally, I made the number 5.5 here. San Diego State minus 5.5. Now, you might say, wow, Trig, that's a pretty big edge based on, where the number is and where you have it. But for me, like, you still have to go win in Laramie in altitude. Wyoming's definitely play. The thing that probably keeps me off of this one and wanting to take a shot with the road team at a cheap price here is the fact that last year Wyoming was really close both times to knocking off San Diego State. I think it was like a 2-point game and a 3-point game. They were right there in both of them and lost. I feel like I won one of them. I had but again, last year I played Wyoming, I remember, in this matchup, and I was getting like a considerable number, probably getting like 3-4 possessions. Now you're looking at plus 2.5, pretty much having to win the game. That's where it's like, if it isn't a tight game, I trust Brian Dutcher and the way, San Diego State, just more of a winning pedigree. So I think I very slightly lean San Diego State, but me personally, I'm not going to take a shot in altitude. I just don't. I don't like it enough, and I don't like the San Diego State team enough to want to make that play on the road. And Bayou makes a good point. San Diego State hosts New Mexico on Saturday. Very much could be a look ahead. That's been a big matchup in this conference the last few years. And that it makes it challenging. And I feel like it's just, you're going to get this a lot in conference play. Shane, this is Shane puts in a perfect segue. So we're going to go right to this game, Rob, because this is kind of illustrating my point. He says, can we talk North Carolina? And this is I'm in the same boat here where it's okay, you have to respect the fact that North Carolina's heading out west here, right? The ACC, of course, ACC. This is the Stanford Cardinal in the ACC. North Carolina is going to make the West Coast trip. But if you can get past them having to go out west, to me, they're a significantly better team than Stanford. And unless, you might be without, Stanford might be without Chisholm Okpara in this game, I read, that would be concerning. I don't think it totally negates what Stanford wants to do, but still he's been good for them. So again, if you can get past North Carolina having to play on the road, doesn't that seem like a cheap price for the Tar Heels to you?
It does. I mean, especially from a matchup standpoint, we'll go way back. And again, I said this yesterday, and we'll probably repeat this throughout the week. But for those who are, at this point in time, tuning into college basketball because there's nothing really else to bet on these weeknights other than college and NBA hoop. The North Carolina side, we've talked about, has an incredibly lengthy front line at 3.610s or better, which matches up really well against Stanford, who, for what it's worth, is basically riding on the coattails of their point guard, Corey. And North Carolina is going to have a way to stop or at least contain Okori, even at home. I think you're right. You have to get past the road swing. It's happening in the Big Ten tonight as well. Michigan's going to go to Washington because the Big Ten has this thing where they need West Coast teams invading the East and the Midwest and vice versa. But in this instance, Adam, I look back at what Stanford did on the road this week in the Virginia duo, Virginia Tech, Virginia, and they really didn't score. They didn't get to 70 points in either game. And immediately, I went to the box scores, and I think what I get from it without seeing the full broadcast of either Stanford game against Virginia is Okori becomes a marked man in this league. And when you don't have enough options offensively, which I don't think Stanford does, especially, he can't attack the rim against these guys. And where are your offensive options against North Carolina? So for me, I think the ACC is tuned in to where Stanford's offensive strength is. And North Carolina certainly should be able to go on the road and prevent it. And North Carolina has really gotten good offensive efforts as of late. I mean, in the beginning of the year, I had some doubts about their scoring capability, but I don't know that I have those anymore after seeing what they've done first couple of games here in the ACC. I think North Carolina is probably a good side. I think better than that, North Carolina team total is probably good as well. So for me, being a totals guy, would probably lean that way, but I'm not going to argue anybody off of playing the Tar Heels in this matchup.
Yeah, I had Okpara with question marks by him, so that's obviously something to keep an eye on throughout the day. I think he played in their most recent game, but I read somewhere that he may be questionable for tonight. You talk about North Carolina and the size up front. I mean, he certainly. I don't think Stanford has no chance without him, but he's certainly a big body up front that they would be without if he's not in here. Again, this is very similar to the last game we talked about where I make the number UNC -5.5. So at 3, there's definitely line value, but you have to get over, the fact that they're going to have to head out west. I think Bayou made a good point. I don't think they had to do it last year. So I think the powers that be that make the schedule in the ACC maybe spared them from having to make this trip last season. We've seen teams struggle. Rob, now this is again completely anecdotal. I feel like the West Coast teams struggle more coming east than vice versa. Do you feel that way a little bit? I think it's harder for the West Coast teams to come out here I don't know. Again, I may have made that up, but this is just like off of memory. We've got UCLA, which I guess this is a good segue here, but UCLA plays at Penn State tonight. We could talk about that game. Feels like they always struggle when they have to come out east. I didn't know, like, again, I think it's just notable either way. Like making the cross country trip midweek, not necessarily easy, but if UNC can overcome that, I think they've got an edge there.
Yeah, and that's on Hubert Davis and the staff, right, to have the team ready, which I have faith in. But to your point, Adam, I'm trying to think, and without having any, data points in front of me to prove yes or no, if I just go to the college football angle, which is the same, teams traveling west to east. The first time around, East had a real hard time, or West had a real hard time coming east. Second year in college football, a little bit of it neutralized itself a little bit. Here, if North Carolina didn't do it, and as Bayou said last year, then to do something new like that. I mean, Maples isn't the easiest place to play when Stanford's good. I just don't know that they have enough options to keep up. And like you said, if Apora doesn't play, I talked about the defensive end for North Carolina being rim protectors with their bigs, but the scoring on the offensive end without Stanford having one of their size pieces is incredibly stronger as well. So I don't know. I think North Carolina, win or lose, should get themselves up and over this team total, which, by the way, is 73.5.
Yeah, if I was gonna play it, I'd lay the 3 with the heels. I just think they're better, and people are joking in the chat. Yeah, this isn't Maples Pavilion from the '90s when like Tiger would show up, and I think Stanford at one point got to 1 in the country. I remember there's a famous buzzer beater. I think they beat Arizona. This has got to be like late '90s, and like the entire crowd like spilled out onto the floor. Yeah, that hasn't been the case at Maples Pavilion for a hot minute. So I don't give them much of a bump for like home court. The bump would be the travel. Let's Garth, I see you there, and I want to talk about the game that you brought up. Now that my super chats are starred, Rob,
I was trying to think of the name of that super chat.
But I kind of teased talking about UCLA Penn State, and I feel like while we're like belaboring the point of like really having to pay the tax for the home team, do you really want to pay the tax with Penn State? I kind of thought that number was a little light, but Cronin, UCLA has struggled in this spot big time coming east. So I don't know. Maybe, and Penn State, to their defense, has played some tough teams in the Big Ten, and they've played them well, even though I don't think they have a league win yet. So UCLA Penn State, interesting one. Do you think Penn State can get a win tonight, or do you like UCLA there?
Yeah, I crossed this game off, Adam, and I'll tell you why. Because as difficult as it might be for UCLA to come east, after the last two efforts that Penn State has had, within a bucket of Michigan, and then to play Purdue the way they did the other day to 8 points, and I guess you could even move it up one game to playing a really nice game against Illinois. Maybe 3 of the most difficult teams you could play in that league, probably the 3 most difficult teams you could play in that league other than Michigan State. How much do they, is it a confidence builder? Here's my question. 2020 hindsight is always the answer. We don't have that right now. But are those games confidence builders for a team to come home and knock somebody off like UCLA? Or are those 3 games so taxing, so draining that they don't have that type of effort in them tonight? And I don't think until, the opening jump and we see what happens here. So for me, it would be more of an in game. But I will say this, Mike Rhodes has this team on the rise. That's for sure. The game against Michigan, and maybe that was a little prelude, Adam, because right after that, Michigan fell to Wisconsin, right? So maybe we had, at least myself, I won't count everybody else in this boat, but maybe I had Michigan on this pedestal where they were not just best in the nation, but had a little distance between other teams at the top in college basketball. Maybe that's not the case. Certainly league play can take that out of you in a minute. It did. I would love to see Penn State here. There's a couple of things that work against them. Their field goal percentage against, effective field goal percentage against, is one of the worst in college basketball. So UCLA can score. Mick Cronin, um, his guys, his top three guys all have scoring capabilities. So I almost wonder if this game doesn't become an over, Adam, because Penn State playing with a little of that Mike Rhodes pace. Offensively, they like to get their shots off quick. UCLA, if I'm Mick Cronin and we've had enough history with him, I think you go on the road and you try to lean on your defense and slowing the game down. Whether or not you can do that at Penn State is another question. I generally think the home team controls pace more than 20 minutes, but it's a difficult game for me because I don't know the answer to where Penn State's focus, energy is going to be here tonight. Do they have a fourth game in a row in them? I'm not sure. UCLA seems to be rounding into form a little bit now. Like you say, 2 road games in the league, lose at Iowa by 13, lose at Wisconsin by 8. Not much to go on there that's positive either.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like no moral victories, right? I heard that thrown around in the Seton Hall UConn post game a little bit. It's like, Penn State, yeah, they've played some good teams tough and haven't gotten crushed, but they didn't win any of those games. And you almost have to wonder how much that took out of you, right? Like they've had a couple really big efforts back to back to back. Even right over the weekend having to go to going to West Lafayette and playing Purdue to a pretty competitive final. Now they have to turn around, and it's like, for me, I don't mind taking a shot with Penn State because UCLA has been bad in this spot, but it's another one where, man, I feel like I should be getting like at least another bucket. You give me like Penn State plus 6.5 here, I may take that shot. At 3.5, I just don't know that you're getting enough line value. I just think there's like too much being baked into home court, and that's another one. Bryce Jordan Centers has not exactly been the craziest home court atmosphere in recent years, especially not for like a non-traditional, like huge Big Ten team. If it was like Michigan State coming to town and they're like top 10, or Ohio State, I feel like they get like a big turnout. I don't know that UCLA gets that type of draw there for them. So again, I feel like with those 3 games in a row, like we kind of illustrated the point where it's like, this is really going to be a thing, at least these first couple weeks of conference play, where I think that the home court, you're really going to have to like evaluate, is the home court worth as much as the books are saying it is? Because otherwise you're going to end up stuck with like some bad numbers on home teams, in my opinion. All right, before we move on, again, we will start to lock in plays. We will have a parlay. I ruined the parlay yesterday with Grand Canyon, but we're right about even on the year. We're going to try another 2-teamer for today. I think we earned at least one more day of trying the 2-teamer, Rob, with that win on Monday. For all of our plays, I've already got a 4% play locked in for today. You can get that. Just get the joint package. Myself, Rob, all the plays we make for 3 days. I'm going for my 6th straight 4% win. I'll put it up individually as well, but it's a far better deal to just do the joint package. So that's what I'm going to promo here. Rob, anything to promo for yourself? Any football for the weekend? What do you got going on?
I don't have it up yet, but it's going to go up probably between this evening and tomorrow. At least one NFL play, Adam. I think these NFL plays, now that we're down to 4 games, you can do the work a little bit earlier in the week and come to some conclusions. I'm waiting on a couple of injury weather reports here before I officially go up with that. But I mean, the promotional stuff, I think basically I said off the top, it's been a really, really solid college hoop run since December the 1st, about 26 units, playing very small incremental percentages of bankroll here. I think you said it best. We looked it up, and it's called Double the Firepower. That's the package you want to look at. Double the CBB Firepower. Myself and Adam combined for 3 days. And I tell you the truth, any 3 days in college hoop is pretty good. You see what this schedule, even though Monday was a dud, Tuesday and Wednesday, as far as schedule is concerned, and watchable games, where Monday was all extra board games, you get a lot of action during a week in college basketball, no matter what 3 days you pick. So again, I would focus on that particular package here. Adam, I don't know. I should know the price. I mean, I know the name of the
Yeah.
package and I know how long. I think the price is $59 for 3 days for both of us. I'm not positive of that. Could be $10 higher. It's no more than $10 higher. I'll put it that way. So go ahead and get involved if you want to extend what you hear here on the show for 60 minutes.
All right, let's go. This is since we didn't really, I feel like we didn't have like a super definitive answer for Garth on that San Diego State Wyoming game. He asked about another one. This one I have a little bit more of an opinion on. And we'll hit this conference. So Garth says, any thoughts on Tulsa, Charlotte? He likes this Tulsa team a lot. Garth, I like this Tulsa team a lot too. I kind of said it from the beginning of the season. I talked about Tulsa as early as the Rhode Island game they won, and then before the Kansas State game they should have won. It was an easy cover. But I was actually at their game last week in Denton, Texas against North Texas. They lost that game. I feel like they kind of, Rob, hit the first bump in the road. You know, that was the first game where they kind of got punched in the mouth in the second half, didn't have an answer. I felt like North Texas was the better team in that game, deserved to win that game. And then over the weekend, where it would have been a spot where I would have thought Tulsa would have bounced back, they drew a really tough matchup with South Florida, a team that's going to play a certain style. And I just don't think, I guess the thing for Tulsa that I've noticed, and my buddy Truman is in the chat, we were at the game together, he pointed this out when we were at the game, is that they kind of lack some interior defensive toughness. And I think South Florida really got to the rim against them because that's what South Florida does. They're Nate Oates 2.0, Alabama, just try to run right at the rim. And I think they were able to do that against Tulsa, score 93 points, and hand them their second straight loss. Much easier ask, in my opinion, here for Tulsa. My number was right on line with this, but I kind of think that Tulsa maybe bounces back here. Charlotte, it can be decent. I think they're on the ascent a little bit, Rob, but I don't know if Tulsa loses 3 straight games. So I'm kind of in with Tulsa being the side I would pick in this game. Anything for you for Garth, Tulsa, Charlotte?
Yeah, I think, Garth, I give you a slight lean here towards the under in this game. 150 and a half seems a little bit high to me, with Charlotte being the home team and playing at the snail's pace that they do. And just knowing that that Tulsa had to go on the road to North Texas, the same snail's pace type team, and the game only got to 139, 11 points less than what we see here. I feel like Tulsa probably can defend Charlotte as well as they defended North Texas. And I guess the key to betting side here is, do you think that contrast in style, Tulsa definitely wants to play quicker than North Texas did. They definitely want to play quicker than Charlotte did. It seemed to bother them a little bit at North Texas. Do you learn from that, or does it bother you again when you're on the road against the same thing? Interesting. It's hard when you don't have more than one real league instance to point at in order to make that decision. But I do think 150 and a half is probably too high for me to play an over. I do think it probably sits somewhere in the 140s in this game. It's something where the winning team comes up with 74 as their winning score. I wouldn't be surprised at all. So to me, that plays toward the under.
Yeah. I think those are both reasonable takes. And again, I see some, I lost my one screen. I'm down to one screen today, but I think Charlotte maybe did take a little bit of money on if that gets knocked down. So someone's been betting against Tulsa the last couple of games. The game I went to last Sunday, North Texas absolutely got slammed. Definitely was a sharp side in that game, which kind of made sense because that probably opened. Like if you want just for a reference point, right? Tulsa opened -4.5 at North Texas like 10 days ago. North Texas is a far superior team to Charlotte, in my opinion. Even though Charlotte's been good, they've strung together a couple wins. The win over Wichita State was nice. That got bet down to like 2.5. North Texas covered. So basically, like 10 days later, like I don't think Tulsa as a team has changed a whole lot in 10 days. I think they just had a couple tough matchups. And now basically the books are like, okay, you can have Tulsa at the same price that we were going to give you against North Texas. Like I think just that alone maybe shows little value on the Tulsa side because they're playing a lesser team here, in my opinion. So especially if that follows the same pattern and Charlotte takes a little bit of money as a dog, which is possible. They've taken money as an underdog in recent weeks. Let's say this got down to like Tulsa -3. I think that's a pretty good bet. If you can get like Tulsa -3 or better, I think that's a good bet. I was at like 4.9 or something here on the number. So that's what I'd be looking for to jump in with the Tulsa side. All right. Let's see here. Rob Vino, do you have any idea what you want to lock in? I'm still there's a lot of games. I haven't really picked one yet. I didn't know if you had an idea of a game you wanted to go to, even if it's not a game you want to use for the parlay. Do you have a game you want to talk about?
Well, I'll say this. For the parlay, I'm down to 2, and I'll just give them both to the audience right now, and maybe I'll make the decision within the next 10 minutes, which I like better. But the FIU Kennesaw State game over the total, which is pretty high, 170.5, 171. If I go to choose that one, I'll give you my reasoning why. And then I feel like in a bounce back. Oh, and I'm just looking here as we speak. Tulsa and Charlotte has been hit to the under pretty much universally down to 149, 149.5 now. But to continue what I was saying, I think the bounce back is in effect here for Denver out of the Summit League. Their over streak got broken. It was 15-0. Now it's 15-1. They only scored, I forget what it was against South Dakota Saturday, but after 3 away games, they get to come home here, play Oral Roberts tonight. I may get to that game total too. Give me just a couple more minutes to figure out which I like best, and then we'll go ahead and give one of those two to the audience.
All right. Well, I mean, I guess I'll pick. So we already talked Tulsa, Charlotte. I'll pick. Let's just stay on that Oral Roberts Denver game, just to do something different, get a little Summit League action.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll break it down. Yeah, we can lock in plays at the end of the game, but like this game's interesting to me because we kind of had the conversation about Denver last week, a couple different times, right? Ahead of the St. Thomas game, they got the cover there. South Dakota State again. We noted that Denver was starting to maybe not be as big of an underdog as they were in previous games. Went off 8.5. They just tucked inside the number there, lost that game by 8. Suddenly, you're looking at laying 8.5 with Denver. So, like, there's been a pretty big swing. This has been a team that's done very well as a dog a lot of this year. Even go back to the non-conference. Huge win for them at Colorado State as a big underdog. Covered that they've had a handful of covers. One at Northern Colorado. That was another underdog win. Covered a big number against the Tulsa team that we just talked about. But Rob, now they're at home laying 8.5. Sometimes I don't like that profile. When a team's done really well as an underdog and now suddenly they flip to being a big home favorite, it's not. I typically don't want to back them as a big favorite. So just talk to me a little bit about that, and then maybe your analysis on where you do want to go in this game, Denver or Oral Roberts.
Yeah, it's, and again, I'll say that in the NBA, we do use as a handicapping angle first game home after a long road trip, which is the situation Denver's in today. I don't know that it applies as much in college because in college you have such a wide variance, margin of separation between teams. In the NBA, guys go out on a 5-game road trip, 4-game road trip, and then come back home and get their affairs back in order. And the first game is generally not one where they play very well. And when I say generally, I mean, better than 50% of the time you can bet on the other side and probably win. Here, I think Denver's probably happy to be back home. Oral Roberts is not a team that's won a lot here recently, and they haven't necessarily come close. The North Dakota State game on the road was pretty good. When you take them to double OT, that's kind of impressive. Whether or not I want to lay points with Denver, though, with the ridiculously poor defense that they have is another issue. I mean, Denver, for what it's worth, they rode that 15-0 over streak as a one-trick pony, right? It's all scoring. It's no defense. We're going to outscore you. And they tried against South Dakota, didn't work. It finally stayed under. And the odds makers obviously have caught up, right? That's the key to our business here is when did the odds makers finally catch up to something that wasn't seen to start a season? So for this game, I think I would still look over. I think Oral Roberts can put enough up, and Denver certainly is going to put their share up. But I'll lock in now in our parlay, Adam, with the other game that I talked about, FIU
All right. Well,
and Kennesaw.
let's do this, Rob, because if you're not going to go to this game for the parlay, I'm going to take this game for the parlay. I'm going to take Oral Roberts. I'm going to take Oral Roberts plus the points, and then we'll go to your game and do the full breakdown of that FIU game. I'm about 3.5 points off where the market is here. Can you tell me is this 8.5 or 9? What do we got right now for this game across?
I think I just saw 8.5.
I think I saw 8.5 too. I just want to make sure I'm not giving out a stale number. While you just confirm what the number is, and I'll get my screen back here in a second. I'm about 3.5 points off where the market is. Oral Roberts has played much better of late. Like if they've just been far more competitive kind of since conference play started. I know they didn't cover against St. Thomas, but I didn't feel like they played poor. Like that's a good St. Thomas team, and that's a team that will slow you down, defend you. Like I feel like remember, if you go back to the beginning of the year, everyone thought St. Thomas in this league was going to like run away with the league. So they're a team that I think maybe a little bit undervalued coming into conference play. Didn't think Oral Roberts played terrible. That was the last game. That was their most recent game. It was a 3-point game at half. St. Thomas ends up winning by 11, but I don't think it was like a non-competitive game. The game before that is the one you referenced, double OT loss at North Dakota State. Pretty solid performance. Game before that, yeah, they lose on the road to North Dakota, but again, they're really not getting crushed in these games, in my opinion, even though there's a couple of 11-point losses in there. Going back to your point, Denver, to get enough stops to not like even give them a chance to kind of creep through the back door if it isn't a competitive game, I feel like you have a couple of different ways to cover this. Oral Roberts comes out, plays good, potentially plays good enough to win. It feels like they're almost due to get, to have one go their way. And then on the other side, Denver could be up 10-11, and you have to worry about them just giving up a couple of points to let you back in on 8.5. So correlates with what you kind of were looking at. I'll take Oral Roberts plus 8.5 for my leg of the parlay. All right, let's go to Conference USA, Rob. I texted you this weekend. You kind of said, man, I wonder what because we talked about travel in this league. And yeah, I think as we were going off air on Friday, you're like, man, I wonder what the home road splits are. And then on Saturday at one point, I was like, it's like 20-4 to the home team. At least this was at some point on Saturday. Now I know late Saturday, Middle Tennessee went on the road and won. And I'm sure it's like, it could have changed a little bit, but I definitely think there's something to that in this league with Delaware, Florida International down in Miami. You got to go out to El Paso, Las Cruces, all over the place. So we're going to head to Conference USA. This is Florida International, I believe, taking on Missouri State. Is that the matchup here?
Kennesaw
State. Yeah, sorry. Florida International, Kennesaw State. The floor is yours.
Yeah, and the point I'm going to make and the reason why I like this is because obviously these two teams I won't even say prefer, they have to have a certain pace, which is extreme tempo. Jeremy Ballard's team has been that way at FIU for as long as he's been tenured there as head coach, and Kennesaw has become that way this year. I think they're the 7th fastest adjusted offensive tempo in the nation. But for FIU, when you get bottled up, which they've been in their last 3 games by teams that want to slow you down, UTEP, Jacksonville State, Missouri State, and you can't get out and play your preferred pace, it kind of is frustrating for a team that's not that good, right? Florida International can score a lot of points, but when push comes to shove and you're asked to play out of style and you're not overly talented, it becomes an issue. Well, it became an issue in those 3 games, right? All of a sudden, the team that wants to play mid-70s to high 70 possessions gets knocked down to 67, gets knocked down to 65 against Missouri State, 71. All 3 of those games stay 150 or lower. Here they get Kennesaw State, where this is going to be absolute track meet. The opening number was far better here, 168 and a half. We can get 171 in this game. I still think 86 aside is not out of the question here. And I'll back that up by saying Kennesaw State played those same slow tempo teams that I just mentioned, 2 of them in their most recent 2 games, Missouri State, Jacksonville State. And Kennesaw State here on their home floor got those teams to 170 each. If you can get those teams to 170 on your home floor, then certainly you can get Florida International to 172 because they're going to play your tempo. They actually forced those 2 teams, Missouri State and Jacksonville State, out of their comfort zone. That's how, I often talk about who can dictate pace, who can dictate tempo. Kennesaw State's showing you that on their home floor, they're going to dictate tempo against anybody. Whether you come in as a 64 possession team or not, you're going to play our way. Florida International loves to play their way. I think we get more than enough scoring opportunities here, which is what you need when you play over. So give me the over here, Adam. Kennesaw State, FIU, which will be more than happy finally to break out of the doldrums of playing a bunch of tortoises and say, okay, this is much more what we like. Over 171 in that game, I'll take as part of the parlay.
Listen, I got to go down to FIU last year toward the end of the season, caught an FIU game, watched them pretty intently the final 2-3, couple weeks of the season. And, in the off season, this happens sometimes where the FIU was not a good basketball team last year. They were near the bottom of this league and they lost a lot of their best players. And I almost feel like they were unnecessarily penalized for that coming into this year. It's listen, when you're a bad team, why do you care if you lost your quote unquote best players? You were bad, right? So don't you want new players at that point? And I kind of felt like that's what happened with Florida International. Now, why I'm bringing that up is I feel like the books almost penalized them. Salachim, I believe, ended up at TCU. I know Deshaun Giddens transferred to the MAC. He's been on Sacred Heart. His brother is an assistant coach there. He's been really good there. But of course, that's a step down, Conference USA down to the MAC. And, they kind of lost their better players. So Florida International has, in my opinion, come into the year as a bottom option. And I kind of felt like they were good. I looked at this team, watched them play a couple times early in the year, said this team's probably going to be better than they are last year. And they certainly have. I mean, if you look at their offensive numbers are pretty good. I think they've been competitive in a lot of games that they should be competitive in. Field goal percentage top 100 nationally. They're scoring 84.8 points per game. Shoot the three, reasonably well. Kennesaw State's a really good rebounding team, but FIU gets after it on the glass. They're not just going to get crushed there on the glass. I guess my point is from the side perspective, I think this could be a pretty competitive game. And yeah, they probably are going to play more of the style that FIU is probably in a more favorable type of game here than they've been recently. So I think you get a competitive game, Rob, that gets over the total here. I lean toward the Panthers, but I got to be honest, after texting with you this weekend, I'm kind of terrified to take a road team at a small number in this league.
Yeah, it's funny too, because I think Delaware on Saturday wound up, did they win straight up on the road? Because when you sent the text, I immediately looked and I thought I should pull the trigger on Delaware. It was close to tip-off time in that game, so I didn't. But I remember they covered. I just can't remember if they won straight up in that game. So I won straight up on Saturday night with Middle Tennessee State on the road at New Mexico. So again, that could come back to the mean, but I don't think it's there's definitely some merit to how many miles these teams are logging this year. Now, Kennesaw to Florida International, probably one of the shorter trips in the league, right? That's actually pretty reasonable travel. Kennesaw in Georgia somewhere, FIU down in Miami. But Rob, give me that number on the total one more time. To be fair to everybody out there, 171. Guys, you can shop it and still maybe find a stray 170.5, but I don't think you'll have any problem clearing 171. Just real quick to sum up what we were talking about with CUSA teams and traveling. It's a good thing, Adam, if a team is successful as a visitor with long travel, the first game, they go and they play back to backs. Maybe coming back against them in the second game is still something, an angle that we should be looking at throughout the season if they do win the first game. But it's a good, like I say, 20-4. Who the heck's going to argue with 20-4 heading in? Even if there were a couple of road wins on Saturday, it's still a very good percentage of winning if you're playing against those teams doing the amount of traveling that like Delaware had to do this past weekend.
All right, real quick. We have someone asking, can we do a package through March Madness? Maybe. We'll certainly ask about that, but I'll tell you what, if you email customer support and ask, they'll definitely make you one, and they'll probably give you a better price than whatever they would post that on the website. So that's a little like hack here, WagerTalk hack. For long-term stuff, just email the girls at customer support, and they'll give it away at whatever they possibly can at the best possible rate. You just show them some love, email in, tell them how great of a job they do, because they really are the best customer support staff. Rob, I can't speak right now. Customer support staff in the game, and they'll give you that package. They'll just do it for you. Okay, let's get one more in here. We've got a few minutes left. Half the chat is talking about Auburn, Missouri, the Battle of the Tigers. This is a pretty intriguing game to me. I had a winner over the weekend fading Missouri with Ole Miss. Rob Bino, I kind of want to fade them again here. I guess Auburn, I'm in the same boat with Texas, where it's like, did I just miss their huge performance, right? They had that big win over the weekend against Arkansas. But I just think Auburn's the better team. And I think this kind of sets up for another Auburn win. What do you think? Auburn Tigers, Missouri Tigers?
Yeah, and just from the other perspective, it's kind of hard to discount the Mizzou side, seeing the way Florida has played the last couple of games and knowing that the one game prior to these two outbursts, Missouri beat Florida on this floor, 76-74. So Mizzou's been a little bit up and down with the offense, Adam. I don't know that they have the amount of offensive weaponry that Auburn does. It kind of comes and goes. There are nights when you watch and there's enough support for Mark Mitchell in that offense. Maybe some nights Jacob Cruz is banging the threes and they're scoring pretty well, but there's nights where the threes go dry and Dennis Gates' team doesn't have enough offense. I think this one's going to get up and down. I'll tell you where I was really, really surprised. Not necessarily surprised that the total opened 159 and immediate money took it downward, but to the lengths that they're taking it downward now. As we were talking here on the show, I saw 153.5. And I think I have to jump in at 153.5 and push back, because Auburn is an incredibly good team when they're playing 94 feet of basketball. They're not as good setting up in the half court this year, but you watch them play the last couple of games, and when they can get games in the open floor, Missouri will go with them. They do well. So because we're real short on time here, I will just close up real quick by saying I'm looking at playing this total over, because I think they pushed it down too far.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Auburn, sorry, I was looking at their schedule. Looking at Auburn's schedule with they have played a really tough schedule. Houston, Michigan, St. John's earlier in the season, NC State, Arizona, Purdue, Georgia, Arkansas. That's a really tough schedule that they've played. And I just think they're going to be able to score here. I had my reasons for wanting to go against Missouri over the weekend. That came to fruition. And, watching that game, I was like, man, Ole Miss kind of is kind of bad. And they still sort of took it to Missouri in the second half. Auburn, a much better team. I could only come back with Auburn in that matchup. Yeah, we are up against it, but try to get to a couple more games today. I know there's a bunch we didn't get to. It is a huge slate. We do the best we can with an hour. The nice thing is, if you're looking for more opinions, we've got them. They're part of our package. So check that out. It is 3 days, myself, Vino, all the plays we make for 3 days. I'll certainly have a couple today. The 4% I have locked in. We did not talk about it on the show. We do have a parlay, and someone asked, do you mind that that Denver got bet up? No, I want to play against that. I don't think Denver should be an 8.5-point favorite in this game. So I'm going to go Oral Roberts for my parlay laid, and Rob Vino is going to go Florida International, Kennesaw State over 171. That's the 2-teamer for today. We'll be back 10 a.m. tomorrow to talk more college hoops. We'll see you guys then.